was a cool September night in Bloomington, Indiana. A young mother, Crystal Renee Grubb, vanished without a trace. 2 weeks later, her body was found in a cornfield north of town, strangled, beaten, and left in the dark with no clear reason, and no one ever charged. But what really happened between September 18th and October 1st, 2010? And why, 15 years later, is Crystal's family still walking the streets of Bloomington, searching for justice? This is the unsolved murder of Crystal Grubb, a case that still haunts southern Indiana. Bloomington isn't a city you'd expect to find on a crime map. Home to Indiana University, it's a quiet, artsy college town surrounded by rolling fields, creeks, and wooded backroads. But behind that calm, small town charm, there are stories that never made it to the headlines. Stories of addiction, poverty, and people who slipped through the cracks. Crystal Grubb was one of them, a 29-year-old woman known by friends as funny, loyal, and fiercely protective of her two daughters. She lived with her mother, Janice Grubb, and her two little girls, Abby and Rosie. Crystal didn't have an easy life. She had struggles, like many do, but she was loved deeply, and when she vanished, her family refused to believe she just walked away. Crystal had grown up in Bloomington, went to local schools, and stayed close to her family. Her friends described her as someone who would give you her last dollar if you needed it. But in the months before her disappearance, life had been rough. She'd fallen in with a group of people her mother didn't trust. People connected to drugs, trouble, and violence. Still, she was trying to turn things around. She wanted to get clean. She wanted to be there for her daughters. Then, one weekend in September 2010, everything went silent. September 18th, 2010, Crystal was seen leaving a house in Bloomington with her boyfriend and two men. They were reportedly driving around, possibly drinking or using meth. At some point that night, they said Crystal started acting strange, paranoid, upset, confused. One of the men claimed she wanted to get out of the car. They said they dropped her off on a dark rural road near the Bean Blossom area, just north of town. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. Her phone was off. Her family didn't hear from her, and hours turned into days. When Crystal didn't come home that night, her mother, Janice, immediately knew something was wrong. Crystal always checked in. No matter how bad things got, she called her mom or her daughters. Janice reported her missing. Posters went up around Bloomington. Friends searched fields, creeks, and abandoned houses, but there was no sign of Crystal. Rumors started spreading that she'd run away, that she was hiding out, or that someone was keeping her quiet. But Janice knew her daughter hadn't just walked away. She told local reporters Crystal would never leave her girls. Something happened to her. Nearly 2 weeks later, October 1st, 2010, a farmer was harvesting corn in a field off Showers Road, north of Bloomington. He stopped when he saw something tangled in the stalks. It was Crystal. Her body was partially decomposed. The autopsy later confirmed head trauma, strangulation, murder. That moment shattered Janice's world. Her daughter hadn't just been taken, she'd been silenced. And the most haunting part? Police had little to no answers. The Monroe County Sheriff's Department opened a homicide investigation immediately. They interviewed everyone who'd last seen her. Her boyfriend, the two men in the car, family, friends. But their stories didn't match. Some said Crystal jumped out of the car. Others said they dropped her off safely. There was no phone data, no surveillance cameras in that rural area, no clear timeline. Evidence from the field was limited. 2 weeks in the elements had washed away most traces. No fingerprints, no conclusive DNA, just the horror of how she was found. In small towns like Bloomington, a murder like this shakes everyone. People whispered theories about drug debts, jealous partners, and secret deals gone wrong. But official updates were rare. For years, the police would only say, the investigation is ongoing. No arrests, no suspects named publicly, no closure for the family. Janice began organizing candlelight walks every year, each October 1st, to keep her daughter's memory alive. Posters of Crystal's smiling face line the streets. Her daughters, now grown, still march alongside their grandmother, waiting for someone, anyone, to finally speak up. The day Crystal's body was found, Bloomington changed. A small town that prided itself on safety suddenly had a young mother brutally murdered, and no one seemed to know why. For the Grubb family, it wasn't just about loss, it was about betrayal. From friends, from neighbors, and from a system that promised answers but delivered silence. Investigators began retracing Crystal's final hours. They questioned everyone who might have seen her that night, especially the people she was last known to be with. Her boyfriend, whose name the family kept private for years, told police that Crystal had become paranoid after using methamphetamine that evening. He claimed she started yelling, saying people were after her, and demanded to be let out of the car. He said they stopped along a dark stretch of road near Bean Blossom Creek, north of Bloomington. According to him, Crystal walked away into the woods. He told investigators that they drove off, assuming she'd cool down and find her way home. But the story never sat right with Janice. She'd told reporters later, even if she was upset, she wouldn't just run off into the dark like that. Something happened in that car. Other witnesses contradicted the boyfriend's account. One said she saw Crystal sitting quietly in the back seat. Another insisted Crystal never asked to get out. The details didn't fit. The timeline was foggy, and everyone seemed to remember things differently. What was clear was this: no one could explain why she ended up dead, less than 10 miles from where she was last seen. Detectives collected what little physical evidence they could, but the field where Crystal was found had been exposed to rain, wind, and animals for nearly 2 weeks. Any forensic trail was mostly gone. Still, the autopsy revealed enough to rule her death as homicide by blunt force trauma and strangulation. She hadn't simply wandered off or overdosed. Someone had attacked her violently. Police looked for DNA, fibers, or fingerprints, but there was nothing strong enough to lead to an arrest. Without physical proof, they needed confessions or witnesses, and that's where things started to crumble. The people Crystal had been with weren't exactly cooperative. Most had criminal records or drug connections. Some avoided detectives altogether. One reportedly moved out of state soon after the murder. Another was jailed on unrelated charges, but refused to talk about that night. The silence in Bloomington was deafening. For Janice and Crystal's family, every passing week felt like another door closing. They began to hold their own searches, checking the fields, creeks, and dirt paths where Crystal might have been taken. Each time, they came up empty-handed. What haunted them the most was that the people who might know something stayed quiet. Months went by, then years. The case went cold, though police refused to officially say it. Detectives continued interviewing people off and on, but new leads dried up. There were whispers of a confession. Someone allegedly told another inmate that he was there that night, but it never led to an arrest. The community started losing faith, but Janice didn't. She printed new flyers every year, taped them around gas stations, grocery stores, and bars. She never let Crystal's name fade. At one of the annual memorial walks, a local news station interviewed Janice. Her voice trembled as she held her daughter's photo. She said, "They think people like Crystal don't matter because she was using. But she was my daughter. She had kids. She mattered." That moment struck something deep in Bloomington. People began to see Crystal's case differently, not as another drug-related tragedy, but as a young woman failed by everyone around her. Investigators eventually admitted they had persons of interest, but no official suspect was ever named publicly. Over time, theories began to swirl through town. Some believed Crystal's boyfriend killed her in a rage that night, fearing she'd expose something. Others thought she'd witnessed a drug deal or violent act and was silenced. A few even suspected her death might be connected to other missing women from southern Indiana around the same time, but nothing was ever proven. In 2015, a private investigator took interest in the case. He reviewed reports, revisited locations, and spoke with witnesses who'd never been interviewed by police. One man claimed he saw a car parked off Showers Road that same week, with a woman slumped over in the passenger seat. Another said he heard screaming near the creek late that night. Each new story brought hope and frustration. The evidence was always too thin, too late. The PI's final report concluded that Crystal likely never left that car alive, but without a confession, it would remain theory. As years passed, Crystal's daughters grew up hearing stories of their mother's kindness, her laughter, her love, but also of her final night and the silence that followed. They now join their grandmother every October 1st, carrying candles through Bloomington streets. The glow of those candles reflects a truth everyone in town knows, but few will say out loud. Someone in Bloomington still knows what happened to Crystal Grubb. For Janice, the fight never ended. She still calls the sheriff's office, checks for updates, and posts online appeals asking for tips. Every message ends the same way. "We just want the truth. Whoever did this, you know who you are. Please, do the right thing." Her words echo what many feel, but can't say. That justice, in small town America, often depends on who you are and who's willing to care. And in Crystal's case, the care hasn't stopped. The family's pain became Bloomington's conscience, a quiet reminder that a mother of two, loved by her family, vanished into darkness and still hasn't found peace. Years turned into a decade, and Bloomington's skyline changed. New apartments, new faces, new traffic. But one thing never moved forward: the investigation into the murder of Crystal Grubb. For the Grubb family, time didn't heal anything. Every October, the smell of harvested corn and the crisp Indiana air brought everything back. The missing posters, the calls, the fear, the grief. Janice would stand at the edge of Showers Road, near the spot where her daughter was found, clutching a candle. The light flickered in her hands as she whispered, "I'll never stop, not until someone tells me the truth." Crystal's story might have faded completely if it weren't for Janice's persistence. She reached out to local reporters, true crime podcasts, and even national organizations that track unsolved murders. Each year, she'd tell Crystal's story again, the same way, the same details, hoping it might reach the one person who knew something. Sometimes she'd get anonymous messages, tips that led nowhere. Other times, strangers would write, saying they remembered seeing Crystal at a gas station or in a car the night she vanished. But the leads were always fragments, nothing solid enough to reopen the case officially. In 2017, nearly 7 years after Crystal's death, local media revisited her story in a televised segment. The Monroe County Sheriff's Department issued a short statement saying, "We have not given up on this case. We continue to follow any credible lead that comes forward." But behind the scenes, the family knew things had stalled. The original detectives had moved on or retired. Evidence sat boxed in storage. The case file had become one of many in a growing stack of cold cases across Indiana. Still, the community hadn't forgotten Crystal. At Switchyard Park, local volunteers painted a mural honoring missing and murdered women from southern Indiana. And among the faces, there she was, her bright eyes and gentle smile frozen in paint, beneath the words, "Gone, but not forgotten." People passing by often stopped to ask who she was. Janice would tell them, "She was my daughter, and she didn't deserve what happened to her." Around 2020, a renewed wave of public pressure emerged thanks to social media. True crime Facebook groups, Reddit threads, and independent YouTube creators began discussing Crystal's case. Many noticed how similar it was to other unsolved deaths in the area, particularly cases involving women connected to small-town drug circles or rural roads. Users began drawing connections, suggesting a pattern, a potential serial offender targeting vulnerable women across southern Indiana. But police never confirmed any link. To them, Crystal's case remained isolated. To the public, it felt like a missed opportunity, one that might have saved others if it had been solved sooner. As time passed, Crystal's daughters became young women. They rarely spoke to the media, but when they did, their words cut deep. One said, "People think we forget. We don't. We wake up every day knowing our mom's killer is still out there." They've grown up with the ache of not knowing, of seeing their grandmother fight year after year, of watching new stories take over the headlines, while theirs faded to silence. That silence became the cruelest part of all. In 2022, a former police investigator who'd worked the case privately for years told a podcast, "The truth is, someone in that car that night knows exactly what happened. There's no doubt. But after so many years, proving it, that's the hard part." He described it as a case with too many whispers and not enough evidence. People had talked, rumors had spread, but without physical proof, no jury would convict anyone. Every piece of forensic evidence had been degraded by time and weather. The only thing left was testimony and fear. Janice often said she felt abandoned by the system. She'd visit the sheriff's office, only to be told there were no new updates. Each time, she'd leave in tears, then return home, sit on her porch, and call the news again, asking if they'd run another story. She wasn't going to let the world forget. Her persistence drew attention from other families of missing women in Indiana. They began reaching out, sharing experiences, and organizing vigils together. What started as grief became a movement, small, local, but powerful. Together, they demanded accountability, transparency, and empathy for cases like Crystal's that too often went ignored because of addiction or poverty. Even now, the official case status remains open but inactive. That means police haven't closed it, but they're not actively working it either. No named suspects, no new forensic breakthroughs, just questions that have aged like the photos on the family's living room wall. Yet, hope still lingers, quiet but alive. Every few months, Janice gets a message or a phone call from someone claiming to have information. Most turn out to be dead ends, but she still checks them all because in her mind, every tip could be the one. When asked in an interview what justice would mean to her, Janice said softly, "It's not about punishment anymore. It's about peace. I just want to know who took her. I just want to tell her it's okay to rest." Her words capture what so many families of the missing feel, that justice isn't just about courtrooms or handcuffs. It's about knowing the truth. Finally, the story of Crystal Grubb is more than a murder mystery. It's a reflection of how easily some lives are dismissed, how quickly cases go cold, and how love can keep a name alive even when the world moves on. Somewhere in Bloomington, someone remembers that night. Someone remembers the panic, the shouting, the silence that followed. And someone, even now, carries a truth they've never spoken. Janice still believes that person will talk one day. Maybe guilt will win. Maybe time will make them brave. Until then, she keeps her promise to walk the streets each October, holding her daughter's photo close, whispering, "I'm still here, Crystal." 15 I'm still years fighting have passed since that night. 15 years since a young mother disappeared into the dark and 2 weeks later was found lifeless among the cornfields of Monroe County. Most small-town murder cases fade into silence long before this, but not this one. Not Crystal Grubb, because while time may have buried the evidence, it never buried the truth. In 2023, a quiet shift began inside the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. New detectives joined the cold case division. Younger officers trained in forensic genealogy and digital analysis. Among the stack of forgotten files was a folder marked Grubb, Crystal R, Homicide. It had sat untouched for years, the paper yellowed, the photos fading. When one of the new investigators read through it, he reportedly told a colleague, this one feels solvable." That comment reignited something that had been sleeping for over a decade. For the first time since 2010, the department began reviewing the physical evidence recovered from the crime scene: clothing, fibers, soil samples, and a few small biological traces that hadn't been fully tested with newer DNA methods. Technology had changed drastically since then. Back in 2010, forensic teams could only detect large, clean DNA samples. Now, touch DNA and genetic genealogy could identify a person from microscopic traces. The hope was that somewhere on Crystal's clothes, her hair, or even a single thread, there might still be a clue, something time hadn't erased. Janice heard about the review through local contacts. At first, she didn't believe it. She'd heard too many promises before. "We're looking into it. We'll call you soon. We haven't forgotten." But this time felt different. She said, "It's like they finally realized She's not just another case file. She was a person. And that, for her, was everything. The department sent some items for retesting to an advanced lab that handled unsolved cases across the Midwest. No one said what the results were, but the sheriff publicly confirmed in early 2024 that the Grubb case was being actively reviewed with new technology. For Crystal's family, even hearing those words was a breakthrough. For the first time in years, there was movement, even if slow, even if small. Meanwhile, the town of Bloomington had changed. The old cornfields were being developed, new neighborhoods rising where farmland once stood. But one place remained untouched, the patch of land near Showers Road where Crystal's body was found. It's overgrown now, wild and quiet, but if you walk there, the air still feels heavy. Locals say even birds go silent for a few seconds when they pass through. It's as if the ground itself remembers. Every October, the vigils continue. People who never met Crystal still come. Students, families, even police officers who were kids when she died. Each candle flickers against the night wind, lighting up faces that refuse to forget. Her name echoes softly through the crowd. Crystal, Crystal, Crystal. Janice always stands at the front, holding the same framed photo of her daughter, a photo that's become a symbol of resilience in Bloomington. Reporters still show up, microphones in hand. Every year, Janice repeats the same plea. If you know something, anything, please come forward. Don't let fear keep you silent. In recent years, social media has become a powerful ally. Reddit threads, true crime TikToks, and YouTube documentaries have brought new attention to Crystal's story. Thousands of people who never knew her now share her name, her photo, her timeline. A few even claim to be investigating the case independently. Journalists, criminology students, and podcasters analyzing police reports and public records. They map her last known movements, mark possible drop-off locations, and discuss suspects that were never named publicly. Some believe there's a pattern, that Crystal's case could connect to other missing women from southern Indiana between 2009 and 2014. Others think her death was personal, the result of rage, jealousy, or panic that turned fatal. Whatever the truth, it still hasn't surfaced. But now, at least, the world is watching. In 2025, nearly 15 years after the murder, the sheriff's office confirmed that new DNA results had been obtained from material previously thought to be unusable. They didn't say who it matched, or even if it matched anyone at all, but they said one word that gave everyone hope, promising. That word spread through Bloomington like fire. Janice cried when she heard it. She said, "For the first time in years, I believe we might finally be close." She started planning this year's vigil early, saying it wouldn't just be a memorial, it might finally be a celebration of justice. But even now, nothing is guaranteed. Leads have come and gone before, evidence has vanished, witnesses have disappeared, and the truth, for 15 long years, has remained buried beneath rumors and fear. What's different this time is resolve. There's a new generation of investigators who grew up hearing Crystal's name. They're not carrying old biases. They don't see her as a statistic or a drug case. They see her for what she was: a mother, a daughter, a woman whose life mattered. Janice, now older and slower, still walks the same route through downtown Bloomington each October. The same path where she once hung missing posters, now lined with candles and prayers. Her voice has grown softer, but her message never changed. She says, "Justice doesn't come fast, but it comes for those who don't give up." That's been her mantra for 15 years, a mother's promise, an anchor of faith that one day she'll look a detective in the eye and finally hear the words, "We got them." Whether or not that day comes soon, one thing is certain: Bloomington will never forget Crystal Grubb. Her name has become part of its history, part of its guilt, and part of its hope. The cornfields, where her story ended, still whisper her name when the wind moves through. And maybe, somewhere out there, the person who took her life still hears it too, because silence can last years, but truth never dies. They say time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time only teaches you how to live with them. 15 years have passed, and the story of Crystal Grubb still echoes through the quiet streets of Bloomington, Indiana. Her face, once printed on missing posters, now lives on in candlelight, social media posts, and the hearts of strangers who refuse to let her name be forgotten. But the most haunting part of Crystal's story isn't how she died. It's how her death changed everyone who touched her case. From her mother's unwavering fight to a community learning that even small towns can hold dark secrets. In the final years of the investigation, something began to shift. Detectives who had never met Crystal started treating her case like a personal mission. One of them described it best: "It's not just a file, it's a story that deserves an ending." For years, they combed through interviews, revisited witness statements, and re-examined physical evidence that had been overlooked. New leads surfaced, quiet, unconfirmed, but enough to spark movement. A car that matched an old witness description was located in another county. A new DNA trace was uploaded to a national database. And suddenly, after more than a decade of silence, there was sound again. The rumors returned too. People in Bloomington whispered about who might have been involved, names that had been spoken in hushed tones since 2010. But this time, no one laughed off the theories. There was too much at stake. Those who had stayed silent back then now faced guilt that had aged into something unbearable. A few came forward with information, small, fragmented details, but every word mattered. One of them said, "I don't know everything, but I know someone who did." That single line made investigators pause. For the first time, they believed they were circling closer to the truth. Meanwhile, Janice continued her quiet war with grief. She no longer waited for the phone to ring every day, but she never stopped hoping it would. She kept the same number, the same house, the same porch, light on every night. It became a symbol. Her silent message to Crystal: "You can still come home." But the truth is, Crystal was already home. She lived in every story her mother told, in every photo that hung on her wall, and in every stranger who spoke her name online. In 2025, a new wave of media attention swept through after a true crime YouTube documentary revisited her case. Millions watched. Thousands commented. Some claimed to have new information. Others simply wrote, She deserves justice. The story of a young mother who vanished and was found lifeless in a cornfield struck a nerve across the world. People began writing to the sheriff's office, offering help, resources, even private lab donations for DNA testing. What had once been a forgotten cold case was now a national discussion. And with every new voice, the silence around Crystal's case grew weaker. But even as hope rose, the reality remained. No arrest, no trial, no confession. Justice still lingered somewhere between truth and time. Detectives described it as a puzzle missing one piece. They had everything but the final link to lock it all together, and that's the part that keeps them awake at night. Today, if you drive along the quiet roads outside Bloomington, you will find nothing to mark the spot where Crystal's body was discovered. No plaque, no flowers, no memorial, just wind, grass, and silence. But the locals know, and if you stop your car and listen, you might swear the wind carries her name. It's as if the earth itself remembers the injustice done there. Crystal's story became more than just a case file. It became a lesson in what happens when the world looks away too soon. For some, it's a reminder that not every mystery gets solved. For others, it's proof that even in darkness, love can outlast death. Janice once said during an interview, "I used to think justice meant an arrest. Now I know justice means people still care." And she was right, because that's what keeps this story alive. Not the forensics, not the police reports, but the love of a mother who refused to let her daughter's name fade into statistics. As the sun sets over Bloomington each autumn, the light turns gold, spilling across the same fields that once held secrets. Children play nearby, unaware of the tragedy that happened long before they were born. Life moves on, but the story lingers, a quiet echo, refusing to die. And maybe that's the real ending. Not a courtroom, not handcuffs, but remembrance. Because Crystal Grubb's story isn't just a crime story. It's a reminder that behind every headline is a human being. Behind every mystery is a mother's tear. And behind every silence, there's still a voice waiting to be heard.